Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. So today is the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. And this is October the 4th. And this is the day in which yesterday I received my expulsion notice from the Society of St. Pius X from the Salvador. Handed it to me yesterday at the priory when I was there saying my prayers. And then today, Father Chazelle received his notice of expulsion in the town when Father came and greeted us and gave his notice on the feast today, St. Francis of Assisi. So Father's feast day, and so it's just to repeat a few words of Father Chazelle this morning. Says that probably today would receive his notice of expulsion. Well, it turned out that that's what happened. Received his notice. Both of us, the notice was written up for the date of October the 1st, just a couple of days ago. And then because of, the internet and emails and all this kind of thing, they're able to send it around the world. And then Father was able to hand it to me yesterday and then to Father Chazelle today. And Father says, of course, being the great feast of St. Francis, he's always, Father Chazelle's, first name is Father Francis, Father Francois Chazelle, and a great lover of St. Francis, his holy patron, and he considers it a great joy to be able to receive the expulsion notice today. He says you can consider this in two ways. It says, follow the spirit of St. Francis. It says, well, maybe we are wrong, maybe we are mistaken, and maybe it was justified to hand out to us the expulsion notice issued on the 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and then given to Father today. And that if it was just, then we should rejoice as St. Francis, because we should rejoice when we receive what we justly deserve. And if it was unjust, then we should rejoice, and rejoice even the more, because to receive a little suffering, a little cross for the truth of our Lord Jesus Christ is a great honor and a great joy. And so whether we deserve to be punished because we are fools, or we are punished because we are fools for Christ, either way we are fools, this much is certain. But in any case, whether we're punished because we are just regular fools of the world, or because we are fools for Christ, in either way we should be happy. We should rejoice. And there should not be any frustration of spirit, and there is not. And there shouldn't be any desire for any negative thoughts towards the superiors. Father Bishop Fillet is our superior general, and Father Couture, our local superior in Asia, and here in the headquarters we receive from Father Couture, and of course in the usual manner, because Father is not here to hand it out, because he's always flying somewhere around the world. So things must be done in the normal fashion. So therefore a delegate hands out the expulsion. All things are happening in the normal SSPX way. We're members of the SSPX. We love the SSPX. And this is the way we operate. And so it's fitting that we should receive things in the normal way, which is normal for us. And so there's no reason to be disturbed. And we don't have any animosity. And we shouldn't have any animosity towards our superiors or towards anyone who is believes we should be punished for speaking out, as we have done. It is a providential thing that there was a bit of debate between Father and myself. He says he was assuring me that he would receive his expulsion papers first, and I would receive mine second. And but on May the 27th, the Feast of Pentecost, on that day, Father Chazelle was not speaking to myself, and I was not speaking to him. We had no communication with each other. He was in Korea, and I was in Davao. And we both decided to, after saying a prayer to Our Lady, both of us did the same thing. We said a prayer to Our Lady, and then decided that it was time to speak publicly. Since today, the day of Pentecost, May 27th this year, or that day, now 19 Sundays ago, it's easy to keep track, because now this next Sunday is the 19th Sunday after Pentecost, and the next Sunday is the 19th Sunday after our blasting to the world. And then many other priests, of course, did the same thing. But we decided to, after saying a short prayer to Our Lady, that it was time to speak publicly, since May 27th was the day announced for the reunion with Rome. The day announced in which everything was going to be fine. So therefore we decided that it was necessary to make a public statement on that day and to send it forth, which is what we both did. And without consulting with each other, and without realizing that. And then it's fitting that since we both sent the words out on May 27th, that on October the 1st, we both get the decree from Menzingen that we should be expelled for having spoken out. And we either spoke out rightly or we spoke out wrongly. We were either right or wrong. And during the course of our discussions, we've spoken with many priests during these last few months. And then also, of course, spoken with our superiors. And then, of course, the sermons and the talks and the writings have been sent throughout the world, not only from ourselves, but from many others. Many others have also spoken out about the present crisis of the Society of St. Pius X, which is a crisis of faith. It is not a crisis like any other that we've ever had before. It is a crisis in which there is a question about what we teach. You know that before 2012, enemies and friends alike, those that hated the society, those that loved the society, and those that didn't care, all knew what the SSPX stood for. Everybody. Enemies and friends alike. We all knew that the SSPX is that society which is against Vatican II. That society which will never tolerate Vatican II. That society that is against the new Mass. That society that is against the modernism, which is not interpreted as something that came from bad men who were at Vatican II, but errors that were contained in the Council itself. That the crisis of the Church is not a crisis of bad men. There have been bad men in the Church since St. Peter and St. Paul, and all, not St. Paul, but St. Peter and all 12 of the Apostles. The first act of the 12 Apostles together was something bad. They ran away from the garden. And Judas betrayed Christ, and Peter betrayed him 3 times. And even after he became the Saint Pope, he still messed up with the compromising with the Judaizers, and St. Paul had to correct him. And so we find throughout the history of our Church, there have always been bad men. There have always been corrupt men. And our Lord Jesus Christ prophesied that there would always be corrupt men in the Church. In the parables, the various parables of Matthew chapter 13 about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven, which is the Church, has good wheat and it has cockle. It has weeds in the same field. The field is the Church. The kingdom of heaven is that Church. And in that Church there will always be wheat and weeds, wheat and cockle. There will always be good and bad. As Bishop Sheen used to say, no man can become a saint unless he belongs to a church in which he can also be a devil. If you're in a church which you're already a saint when you enter, then you're saved because you believe in Jesus and everything is fine, then everyone is the same and there can be no saints. But in our church, we know that there are devils. In our church, we know there are bad bishops. We know there are bad priests. We know there are bad faithful. We know that there will be bad popes. So that there are bad men is not something special. It's in fact one of the hallmarks of our church. That our church, which is the true church founded by Jesus Christ, will always have bad men in it. From the beginning with Judas until the very ending of the world. And yet the church will still produce holiness. The church will still be spotless. The church will still produce and teach the true faith. And so to say that the crisis in the church today is only a crisis of Masonic cardinals and satanic bishops and satanic priests and AA 1025 and AA 1026 and AA 1027 and AA 3,479 million or whatever it is, this is not our crisis. It is a crisis in which the organs of the church, the official organs, have taught heresy and have taught error. Error is that which kills the divine life and souls more than anything else. If a doctor loves you and the doctor wants to save you like the doctors of Napoleon, and they fed Napoleon cyanide, and they fed Napoleon arsenic in small doses because they thought that would cure him. They were very nice men, but guess what happened to Napoleon? He died. And if your doctor hates your guts, and he really wants to kill you, and so therefore he gives you the right medicine that will save your life, go to that doctor. Maybe he hates you, but if he's going to give you the medicine that will save you, then you take the medicine. And if the doctor loves you, but he's a quack doctor and he's an idiot and he doesn't know what he's doing and he gives you the wrong medicine, he's a nice man. Don't take his pills. And so in our crisis in the church in which we have right now, we are not arguing that it is a crisis of bad men. There have always been bad men. It is a crisis of bad ideas. It is a crisis of bad theology. It is a crisis of bad faith, which when good men take this bad faith and they feed it to their children will die. Like our American children. I am not the only fat one. There are many fat ones in America. And it is not because of bad eating. I mean, eating too much food, which we do, of course. But because of the poison that is being fed our American people. The Monsanto Corporation and the various corporations in control of food, they are putting poisons and they're putting growth hormones and they're putting chemicals inside of the corn and inside of the cows and inside of the chickens. And when we eat corn and when we eat cow and we eat chicken and we eat pig, we're eating poisoned foods. And as we eat these foods throughout, more poisoned foods in America than anywhere else, and that's why we're finding amongst young American children throughout the United States all kinds of strange sicknesses, massive increase of every kind of ailment, asthma, the massive increase of so many sicknesses, so many of them are increasing. Why? Because they're being fed poison. Now when the mommy cooks the food, she wants to help her child, but the child is being fed poison. And so over time the child gets sick. And this is what's happening inside of our church. It isn't a matter of whether there are bad men or good men. Now we must condemn greatly evil men. This must be done. But the great crisis in which we find ourselves is a crisis of faith. And when Father Giselle and myself and other priests spoke out on May 27th, whether we were mistaken or not, we spoke out against the grave error, against the grave danger of faith, against the theology. The agreement, the signing of the paper, is completely secondary. What we argued against more than anything else was the change of theology. There has been a theological shift within our society of St. Pius X. And we either say it truly or we say it falsely. If we say it falsely, then it is necessary to prove us wrong. But if we say it truly, it's necessary to correct these errors. There isn't a clear condemnation of the error anymore. We are not condemning heresy and the errors of Vatican II like we used to. When you get the best, what did the Bishop Fillet apparently said on Sunday, according to Father Pfeiffer, speaking to Father Giselle on the phone today? Apparently he said yesterday or a few days ago, we can't work anymore with this Pope. We can't work anymore with this Pope. Apparently he said that in some sermon somewhere in France. Wherever he is at this time. Well, that's good. But then there were several priests on May 27th who said, we can't work with this Pope. And why did we say that? Because, not because he's an evil man, belonged to the Hitler Youth Group, but because this man is teaching error and pushing it with all his might. Maybe he believes in the error. Pope Benedict XVI firmly believes that he's a good Pope. He has good intentions. He may go straight to heaven when he dies. God only knows his heart. But his teaching is horrible. His teaching is damaging souls. His teaching is in favor of the Vatican Council II, which he loves and he is promoting. And on October the 11th, a few days from now, what will the Pope be doing? He will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of what he calls the greatest gift of the Holy Spirit to the 20th century, and what the Blessed Virgin Mary calls the evil counsel. they have different ideas. They have different ideas about that council. We are not upset that we are being condemned. What matters is that the truth be preached. And let us suppose that we are just mistaken and we're crazy, which is true. We are nuts. That much is certain. But nonetheless, that we're mistaken. And we believe that unfortunately our superiors are changing the teaching because of what they say in dc.org, what they say in sspx.org, what they say in the organs of authority, the new language, the new direction, the new practice that is being practiced in our SSPX, which seems to be in another direction than the direction that we have been going the last 40 years. It isn't the same clear teaching. We're not condemning the errors greatly. As the example mentioned by Father this morning or last night, Father Giselle, again the whole crisis of the Summorum Pontificum, the whole crisis of the Mass. We are not warning the sheep that this Latin Mass endangers your soul. Why? Because when you go to the Summorum Pontificum Mass, you are accepting the new Mass as the correct ordinary Mass, which means you're compromising in your faith. You are accepting that the old Mass is legitimate only because of the gracious permission of Pope Benedict XVI, which means you're rejecting quo primo. And then you are at a Mass in which that priest, like one lady told me in St. Mary's, Kansas, one of our former parishioners from the Connecticut area, she told me, he says, you know, for me as a mother, I look at it this way. Would I want to have my 7th, 8th, 9th baby? Do I want my baby to be delivered by a doctor who at 9 o'clock in the morning aborted a baby, and at 2 in the afternoon aborts a baby, and then he's going to help deliver my baby at 11 in the morning? Forget it. I do not want that doctor anywhere around me and my baby. I don't want to have a doctor deliver my baby who does abortions in the morning before and abortions in the evening after. Why would you want to go to a Latin Mass of a priest who says the new Mass at 9 and the new Mass at 12 and the Latin Mass at 10? The sacrilege before and the sacrilege after. Does it not leave some stain on that priest when he celebrates the true Mass? And what about all those priests who have been kicked out of their dioceses, expelled from their orders, who have been put in insane asylums or threatened to be put in insane asylums, have been declared insane because they stopped saying that Mass? I live with one of them. He used to say the new Mass, Father Bebo. They told him he needed to see a doctor, he needed to see a psychiatrist because he only wanted to say the Latin Mass. He gave up the new Mass. He was expelled from his diocese. He only celebrates the Latin Tridentine Mass. He was conditionally reordained. He is thrown out from his diocese. And he made that sacrifice because the true Mass was the only Mass for him. And now we're going to have tell our faithful that these priests who sacrificed everything, who were thrown out of their families, thrown out of their parishes, thrown out of their dioceses, thrown out of their religious orders, in order to stand for the only true faith which they had discovered, are going to be put on the same par as those who say the new Mass at 9, and the traditional Mass at 10, and the new Mass at 11. Speaking to several of these priests in the Philippines, I found that most of the ones that I spoke to, about half, don't even like the Latin Mass. They say it because the people want it, and they remember how to say it, because they used to say it 75 years ago, and they're 120 now, and what the heck, so they can still say Dominus Vobiscum, and so they might as well. They get a stipend, a few people want it, what do they care? They don't love it. And we used to tell the faithful, don't go to the indult Mass because it endangers your soul in so many ways. But now many priests don't say that anymore in the SSPX. I know of more and more cases, learning more of them in the last few months than I knew before, and I knew many cases before, of different SSPX priests who are not corrected, who recommend to people for one reason or another, go ahead and go to the endo. Go ahead and go to the endo. There has been a doctrinal slide in the SSPX. This is what we are speaking out against. We have nothing against Bishop Fillet. We have nothing against Father Couture. Father Couture has been my superior the last 6 years. Father Chazelle's superior the last 10 years. And he has been good to us. We have nothing against Father Couture. We have nothing against Bishop Fillet. Our crisis is a crisis of faith. That's our crisis. And it must be answered. As Father Chazelle wrote his little letter of answer to the expulsion notice, with 18 whereases in it, that we had today, that he received, it quoted several of his sentences in which he stated, Bishop, my superior general has a new doctrine no longer anchored in the faith. There has been a shift of doctrine. There has been a change of teaching. And these statements are quoted, but not one of them is denied. Not one of them is refuted. Not one of them is answered. Now, we are saying serious things. There has been a shift of teaching. Many priests and bishops, at least 2 of the 4 bishops of the Society of St. Pius X, also recognize that there has been a doctrinal slide within our society. There has been. It's an undeniable fact. And like Father said today, I have always known, to Father Chazelle earlier today, I have always known that there has been liberal priests, and even I myself had a battle with liberalism. All of us have to fight this battle because it's a battle of our 20th century. We're all infected with it. It's normal. It's original sin. It's a crisis we're dealing with. So that we have to fight liberalism is normal. That there be some priests infected with liberalism in our time is normal. Nothing to be surprised about. But what is a problem is when the liberals float to the top. And when the liberals are the primary leaders at the top, and the liberals are making the guidance at the top. And the liberalism is that which is coming from the top. And this is what we have been seeing slowly but surely developing over the last several years. It's serious. But it's not about, I like this person, I don't like that person. It's not about these kind of things. It's a crisis of faith. If we are wrong, then we should be demonstrated to be wrong. And if we are right, then there should be a correction. Now we said a few months ago, you cannot work with Pope Benedict XVI because he's committed to liberalism. Look at all the things he's doing in 2012, and most especially that great sacrilege and that great scandal of Assisi, which was only a few months ago, in October of 2011. 86, Assisi happened, and Archbishop Lefebvre consecrated within 2 years, and it was one of the main signs. Now we're talking less than a year, only a few months ago. It was a great scandal of Assisi. Who brought about that scandal? Pope Benedict XVI. These are very serious problems. Now, what is it that makes us think that the Pope of Assisi, the Pope of the Spirit of Assisi, the Pope of the Great Council of Vatican II, the Pope of the New Mass, the Pope who wore a suit and tie in Vatican Council II and one of the Periti, who helped destroy the church as one of his own personal life work, one of the elements, the most important elements of his personal life work. What makes you think that that man is going to be the leader of Catholic tradition? Now that's what we said in multiple ways, and so many other priests said the same thing. We weren't the only ones. Many other priests said the same thing. Now Bishop Fillet says a couple weeks ago, I made a mistake in judgment, okay? If you made a mistake in judgment, then accept the consequences of that mistaken judgment. Admit that those priests who didn't make that mistaken judgment were right. But they can't do that. And what was the mistaken judgment? It's not perfectly clear. And remember, the way that the devil works is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We must be very careful. 2 steps were made forward in this summer. Open saying that we have to make an agreement with Rome, and if we don't, we're going to become sedevacantists. An open saying that we have to see the good in Pope Benedict XVI. An open saying that we can see the positives that are happening in the church, that there is a great move back towards tradition, and the church has changed, and we have to be more positive toward it, and therefore we must make a deal. And then, 1 step back. We're not going to make a deal. Not 2 steps back. 1 step back. We're not going to make a deal. We're not going to make a deal, so I won't worry about it. It can be likened very much like those priests, those good priests in the 1960s. I am never going to take my altar away from the wall. But they're turning the altar around. I'll never do that, but I'll let it go away from the wall. And now they're going to bring lay ministers in. I'll never allow lay ministers, but I'll let it turn around. And now women are giving communion. I'll never let women give communion, but the men can do it. Now they want to make women priests and women servers. I'll never let them serve, but they can bring Holy Communion. If you can bring Holy Communion, why can't you serve? Never understood that one. But nonetheless, one priest told me that back, and I'm friends with this priest to this day. He still says the new Mass. But he told me when I was newly ordained priest, if the Pope approves of altar girls, that's it. I'm joining you guys. 1 year later, the Pope approved of altar girls. So I came back and said, Father, the Pope approved of altar girls. Because you know what? They're more attentive than the boys are. Once you start making the steps, you think you can stop, but it's not very easy. So we made 2 steps forward this summer. And now Bishop Vallée is making 1 step back. And we're relieved. He must take 2 steps back, not 1 step back. What about that public statement which hundreds of lay people, maybe thousands, but for sure hundreds, and at least 50 priests, to maybe 100 priests, but at least 50, asked, what are you saying in the Catholic News Service interviews? The problem here. What are you saying in the Catholic News Service interview? When you said, what we SSPX, many of the things that we SSPX used to condemn as an error of the Council, we learned in the doctrinal talks that they were not an error of the Council, but they were a misinterpretation that came afterwards. Okay? He didn't say all the things, he said many of the things. Well, what were many of those things? What was one of those things? May 11th he made the interview. Now there have been several months in which to correct it, explain it, amend it, back it up. None of which has been done. But he did say explicitly, the SSPX used to teach that certain doctrines of the Council were erroneous and of the Council, when in fact we SSPXers were wrong. And we learned this in the doctrinal talks. Now, if you remember in 2006, we must have doctrinal talks so that we can convert Rome. Who got converted? Who changed? Now what we're saying here is serious, but it is a serious matter of faith, and it's either true or it's false. You can watch the interview, it's 6 minutes long, grab your popcorn, turn on the interview, it's got beautiful music in the background, nice cows, everything, and listen to the words. Some have transcribed it already, so you can find the transcription as well. Was it taken out of context? If it was taken out of context, how was it taken out of context? Why not just pull out the whole context? Not done. And there is this statement that we have a new idea of the Council. The Council used to be the greatest of all evils, but in the April 14th letter of Bishop Vallée to the 3 bishops, He says, you make the Vatican Council into a super heresy. It used to be a super heresy. Now it's become a small heresy. Now there's worse things in the council. As Father Chazelle pointed out several times in the course of this summer, if you don't believe there's worse things in the council, go to South America. Go to Mexico. In Central and South America, 99.9% of everybody in those countries was Catholic before 1965. In America, it used to be that way. It isn't that way anymore. You see a Mexican, Catholic. Somebody speaks Spanish, Catholic. But now, because of Vatican II, in Brazil alone, in the 1980s, in that country alone, more than 1 million Brazilian Catholics left the Catholic faith for Protestantism or atheism every single year of the 1980s alone, in only one country, in Brazil. 1 million, more than 1 million every year. I was in South Phoenix in the United States, in Mexican territory. What's across the street from me? Mexican Protestant Church. What's the next one down? Mexican Protestant Church B. Mexican Protestant Church C. They come to our church to get baptized, of course. Then they show up again for First Communion. Then they show up again for marriage. Otherwise, it's Protestant Church, Protestant Church, Protestant Church. And that's because they still have that Catholic sense that they can't leave the church completely, but they've left it. And now the new generation never comes to the church. Why did that happen? Why are Spanish-speaking people no longer Catholic? It's called Vatican II. And the millions and millions and millions and millions. That's a super heresy at work. More millions have left the church because of Vatican II than Protestantism. More millions have left the faith than all other heresies throughout the last 2,000 years combined. If that's not a super heresy, then there is no super heresy. But yet Bishop Villay says in the letter to the one bishop to the three bishops, you're making it into too big of a deal. There's so many worse things in the world. Like what? What is worse than an idea, an error, that sends millions and millions and millions of souls to hell, and takes those millions and millions of souls who are members of our church and makes them no longer believe in the truth of our church? A Catholic nun told myself and Father Chazelle in India, in Andhra Pradesh, meeting a Catholic nun in Andhra, and she said, how can you call yourself a Catholic and believe there's no salvation outside the church? No Catholic believes that. Another nun told us, what do you mean you're a Catholic and you believe priests are supposed to be celibate? Nun, sister. Another 4 Mother Superiors, seeing us in Varanasi, they were shocked. And they said, Father, what? We have never, in our last 25 years here, we have never once seen a priest kneel down and pray before Mass. We didn't know priests could do that. 3 Mother Superiors, about 20 nuns. Father was saying his Mass, I was saying my prayers, and I said my Mass, and he was saying his prayers. They were shocked because they had never seen it before. These are signs of something very super bad. How did it become less evil? You know, the way to accept an evil, first of all, it is the greatest of all evils. It's rule number 1 of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. First of all, sin is the greatest evil. And then sin is really bad. And then it's not that bad. And then it's bad, but, bad. And then it's, not perfect. And then it's okay, and then it's an obligation. We have gone from it being the greatest of evils, heresy, to being bad. How did it go from the greatest of evils to bad? This is a sign that we're going down the slide. And he who begins going down the slide, he used to go to playgrounds many times. I've watched many a child on a slide, but the ones that started going down, usually they went to the bottom. They didn't get stuck in the middle somewhere. They go all the way down. And so when you see someone going down the slide, you say, stop. This is what we must do. And now we're getting expelled. We either speak the truth or we speak falsely. If it is false, it needs to be shown to be false. If it is true, then we must continue to speak it. And to be thrown out, or to be exiled, or to be set aside is normal. Nothing to be worried about. And beware of a temporary or small backtracking. Beware of the one step back. The one step back very often is another trap in order to get you to go to sleep again, to get you to say, oh, everything's okay now. We've made one step back. We've still slid forward by saying things are better in the church. We've slid forward by saying the Vatican II isn't really that bad. We've slid forward by saying 95% of the council is okay. It's a legitimately convoked council. Pope Benedict XVI is so much better than John Paul II, even though he's not really good. But we shouldn't make the deal yet. So aren't you happy? No, we're not happy. 100% of our faith is true, and 100% of error is error. And our black must be black, and our white must be white. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no, and let us not be waffling backwards and forwards. So in any case, we must continue and persevere in the faith, and it's going to be a long battle. Long battle. Be vigilant. Watch and pray. Anyone can fall. Anyone can collapse. And anyone can be deceived. Keep the strong devotion to Our Lady. Watch and pray. And study your faith. Know your faith. St. Pius X said that the way in which heresy is spread is not because of bad heresiarchs telling lies, but because of Catholics who don't know their faith. And what was his answer? Catechism, 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 catechism. 10 encyclicals on catechism. And he was only a pope for a little more than 10 years. 10 different writings on catechism. Know the faith, know the faith, know the faith. And then when the heresies come in, we say, no, that's not right. We must know our faith. We must study the situation. We must read. We must understand. We must pray for the enlightenment of the Holy Ghost. Especially in this time of crisis when the Pope is telling us baloney. And the bishops are telling us baloney. And it's more important for us to study our faith because we can't trust what's coming out of the mouth of popes, bishops, and priests. We have to study and know our faith. And then try to live by it until we die faithfully with that faith in our hearts. Live and love the faith. And if we have to sacrifice a few things for the sake of the faith, then let it be done and let us be happy about it. Do not turn against charity. Do not turn to bitterness. Do not turn to anger. Turn only to the truth. And remember the trick of Christ. What do we do with our enemies? We love them, pray for them, and we try to convert them. And that's the Catholic way of dealing with enemies. And so let the Muslims be the ones who pull out the machine guns and the knives. For us, we pull out the rosary, we pull out charity, we pull out confidence in Our Lady, and we ask for her to protect us, because without the love of her, no one can survive today. She's the one who's going to crush the head of the serpent, and she's going to crush him pretty soon. And when she crushes him, we need to make sure we're inside of her mantle. And she will make sure that we preserve our faith. If only we love her with all our heart, complete confidence in her victory, and not in anything else. God bless you all. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.